Diversity is touted as a badge of honour. But although increasingly diverse, our cities remain divided. As minorities look to both blend in and stay true to their heritage, many get caught up in a chasm between the two. To achieve social integration, we must first enable integration at a personal level, giving people spaces to meet and co-create a shared identity. I want to start today by asking you a simple question. Have you ever felt uncomfortable in your own skin? Maybe because your body, your skin colour, your hair, your voice. I know that I have. Growing up as a brown-skinned boy and as the son of immigrants here, I thought I was pretty integrated. After all, my name is Jordan Patel, which I suppose has always given this outwardly impression that I was just as much a British lad as I was an Indian. But for most of my life, I was caught up between these two aspects of my cultural background, between my British upbringing and my Asian heritage. In the end, I just felt stranded. At home, my family life was just unstable and unhappy. And when I was at school, I was often bullied and marginalised for being an ethnic minority. This sort of marginalisation and everywhere I looked left me with a desire to prove myself to others and a hunger to prove that I, in fact, belonged. I began to distance myself from the culture which I grew up in and the heritage surrounding it. I began to drink, party, and generally just become a bit of a rebel. And then I find out that you can even make good money doing all this. I began to work in the nightclub scene and spent the next few years just travelling around the world, going to places like Ibiza, partying, making money, and thinking finally I belonged. So outwardly, I probably appeared to most people to be a success story. When it comes to integration anyway. I was well off, apparently happy, and my skin colour or background didn't seem to have played a part in how I achieved it. The truth, though, was that I was just fighting this internal battle. With one arm, I was pushing away with every ounce of my strength from my background as the son of immigrants and as an Indian. And with the other, I was reaching out to grasp for a goal of almost erasing my position as the cultural other. As I stretched between these two unachievable goals, I just felt less and less value in myself. Then ultimately, I was snapped out of it very suddenly a few years ago. I experienced the loss of life. A kind person who had got caught up in a violent crime through absolutely no fault of his own. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. This hit me like a train. To be honest, I'd never experienced death before. And I was faced with this mortality of myself and those around me in a way that just shook up my life completely. At the same time, I went through this professional turmoil, and even as I was trying to remove myself from this nightclub scene with which I had been trying to break free from, and while my foot was kind of still in the door, people around me and the places I worked continued to fall in with the wrong crowd. And they were the victims of violence and crime. A sort of depression within me began to spiral, and soon I had put on huge amounts of weight, lost my confidence, and had cut ties with many of those previously closest to me. And with no job, once I'd actually finally managed to get out the club scene, I apparently had few or no prospects. I soon realised I had to find a way of finding and expressing my true self, which was made up of all these things that had happened to me and which were at the same time based on my heritage and my upbringing. In the end, I found faith. I embraced Islam. I reverted. I became a Muslim, which has changed my life, quite honestly, in ways I couldn't even put into words. But also, know that I was lucky to have been able to find that inner strength within me. I have seen too many others lose their way, and know that there must be a way for us to help prevent this as a society. Of his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the differences of your tongues and your colours. Quran, verse 30-22. Ethnic minorities face a higher unemployment rate. They are more likely to live in poverty. And according to the 2018 race disparity audit carried out by our government, 1 in 3 homeless people are from ethnic minorities. And on top of that, over 40% of our children are in the youth criminal justice system. They're from the same backgrounds, which means far too many of our young kids are losing their way before they've even had a chance to develop and learn about the world around them. This video shows a racial disparity in population size throughout our city between white, Pakistani, Indian, Chinese, Bangladeshi, and black. This only perpetuates negative stereotypes that already exist, creating a spiral where things just get worse and worse. But when you think about it, it's not really a surprise that people feel so detached from society and from a sense of belonging. The fact is that we still live in a society, in a racially and culturally segregated society. If we just look at the city we're in right now, my home city, Birmingham, the data show just how segregated we are. These maps taken from the data from the 2011 census shows the density of population and different ethnicities, starting with the intensely majority white areas to the north and the south, the Pakistani community largely centred in the central southeast of the city, the Chinese in the central southwest, and the African and Caribbean communities largely in the northwestern part of the centre, along with most of the non-British white population. There are a lot of social economic reasons behind this, which, to be honest, are far beyond my understanding. But what I do know is that most of these factors will take years to change. They would require a deep level of government intervention. So my question to you is, how do we accelerate the changes that are needed to narrow the divides in our society and provide people with a greater sense of belonging? We can't expect people to permanently move from their communities, but we can enable them the opportunity to genuinely share their city more actively with people outside of their culture and ethnic background. The differences in the populations, in many ways, isn't the problem. It's actually to be expected that people will congregate with other people like them, especially when moving to a new country. But this means that for a lot of people, they don't actually integrate and mix with others outside of that. We just have to look at a survey on school children carried out a few years ago by Dame Louise Casey's review into opportunity and integration. Children who went to school in areas where there are predominantly Asian families, the kids thought that the population of the UK was somewhere between 50 and 90% Asian. The reality is that it's just 7%. But considering there are over 400 state schools in the UK where more than half the students are of Pakistani or Bangladeshi heritage, this means that there are just tons of kids out there who have clearly not had a chance to mix with other cultures or groups outside of their own. Visibility of people who aren't like us is the key to a truly integrated society. And we have to address this if we want to see an end to the division that currently exists at all levels of our society. We need to create spaces where people can actually meet and engage with other people from other cultures and backgrounds. We need to create spaces where people can express and celebrate their own culture, and where they can understand and appreciate the culture of others. In the case of Islam, if a business is not halal, it's already closed off to a large section of our community. If there aren't faith rooms, then it's very likely that people will not attend a venue at a certain time. Otherwise, they're going to miss their prayers. And one very important aspect is that the nighttime offering for religious people of all faiths who do not drink are very few and far between. By simply catering to all these needs, we are able to bring people into areas where people from all sorts of backgrounds are more likely to be able to mix and integrate. And if the visibility of people from other backgrounds is the key, as I said earlier, then providing these spaces where everyone can mix, then we are going to be able to make it so that future generations have a smoother experience of culture and identity. Research carried out by the Laid Law Foundation in Canada back in 2002 that the provision of spaces which was shared by Indigenous people and the rest of society was among the 4 most important factors increasing their ability to be part of a community. The other 3 factors all stemmed from this. So once they had a shared space within the community, they could build relationships, develop skills through learning, and feel a sense of personal agency. But the initiatives often are tailored to older generations who are probably more likely to feel in need of a community hub. But we can't go on neglecting the younger members of our society who often don't even have access to different communities, people and support networks in school, let alone at home or anywhere else. Therefore, we have to make a cross-cultural effort to build integrated spaces into our society so that particularly the young are actually able to integrate, interact and enjoy what other people's cultures brings to their lives. It requires us to take this action ourselves because we can't wait for others to take control for us. We have to do it ourselves as a society and a community. We have to create spaces in which people can truly see, learn about and enjoy the different cultures around them, which will then help to shape a more cohesive and shared sense of belonging in spite of our differences and not because of them. Because ultimately, identity is something that is always changing. As individuals, we're always learning day by day. We're never the same today as we were yesterday. And communities aren't any different. They're always shifting and taking on influences from outside, as well as redefining their own background and cultures. The more that we can see each other's communities, the more that we can empathise with them. And the more that we can empathise, the more that we can understand and appreciate our differences. When we work together to co-create our shared identities through food, fashion, art, business, or anything else, that's when we will see a more compassionate, fair, and genuinely diverse society. Thank you so much for listening.